On today's World Insight with Tian Wei, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo in Pyongyang to follow up denuclearization. Could his third visit be the charm? And I get up close with Xander Parish, one of the best ballet dancers of the world, who did what it takes to be the top ballerino of St. Petersburg Mariinsky Theater.
Where in the world better to do that than here?
Hello and welcome to World Insight with me, Tian Wei, coming to you live from CGTN in Beijing. We begin today's program in Pyongyang, where U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is headed to have his third visit in 3 months. He will hold follow-up discussions to the summit in Singapore with DPRK leader Kim Jong-un and push forward the denuclearization process. Could a detailed denuclearization roadmap come out at all during this time? We will ask our panelists. Let's take a look at this first.
Follow-up diplomacy on the Korean Peninsula. The U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo departed Joint Base Andrews for Pyongyang on Thursday, and he will spend a day and a half on his first overnight stop in the country. DPRK leader Kim Jong-un is set to meet with Pompeo. A White House statement said America's top diplomat will continue consultations and implement the forward progress made by U.S. President Donald Trump and the DPRK leader.
In the last 8 months, you haven't seen missile launches, you haven't seen the nuclear detonations, and again, these conversations are continuing to evolve. I'm not going to get into the details, but I can tell you that progress continues to be made.
Mr. Trump also took a Twitter victory lap before the visit. "If not for me," he tweeted, "we would now be at war with North Korea." But progress is in doubt after recent reports on the DPRK's nuclear program, which showed Pyongyang continuing to develop its missile and nuclear programs. The U.S. State Department has allowed 6 reporters to accompany the Secretary for more independent information. Pompeo's visit is his first trip to the DPRK since the summit in Singapore last month. At the summit, the two leaders signed a joint statement, and Kim agreed to a full and gradual denuclearization, while Trump announced the U.S. is ending war games. And then within a week, Pompeo and Kim visited Beijing successively. Both of them thanked China for diplomatic efforts on the Korean Peninsula. For Pompeo's upcoming visit to Pyongyang, China was hoping for positive results.
We are pleased to see the U.S. and the DPRK carry out frequent diplomatic interactions to push forward the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. China hopes the two sides could work together to fulfill the consensus reached by the two leaders. China also hopes the visit will yield positive outcomes.
Pyongyang is Pompeo's first stop in a week-long journey. He will also visit Tokyo, Hanoi, Abu Dhabi, and Brussels.
For more on Secretary Pompeo's trip to Pyongyang, we are joined in our Beijing studio Rong Ying, who is the Vice President of the China Institute of International Studies. Welcome, sir. In Washington, D.C., we have Jenny Tao, the Managing Editor and Producer of 38 North, a website devoted to informed analysis about the DPRK. Welcome, Jenny. Also in Washington, we have Ivan Yeland, the Senior Fellow and Director of the Center on Peace and Liberty at the Independent Institute. Welcome as well. May I start with you, Ms. Tao, about the Secretary of Pompeo's trip to Pyongyang? How much will he be able to nail down a draft, or at least a somewhat way of approaching a roadmap for the denuclearization?
Well, I think that's the question we all have, and I don't think any of us have any definitive answers at this point. Of course, all of us are waiting patiently, or some less patiently, for this roadmap and to really have a better sense of how we're moving forward and what we've done so far. You know, the administration keeps alluding to the different types of commitments that North Korea has made, some of the commitments that the U.S. has made, but we don't have the full context yet, and we don't know how this all fits together. And I think that's really what the anxiety is right now, is trying to figure out where are we going, how far have we actually gotten so far, and then to be able to evaluate, is this really a good deal? And so far, we just don't have those details.
Mr. Rong, I know you've been following the details of earlier interactions a lot throughout the year. So let me ask you, some is comparing what happened earlier with the several rounds of six-party talks to what is now today. They say we are coming back once again to the a very original point where six-party talk started, meaning after the political commitment, there has to be a plan, and we don't have a plan. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think someone even referred to the even much earlier, sort of 1994 framework agreement. So that is, well, anyway, there's always kind of skeptics and critics. I think for this mission, for this visit by Secretary Pompeo, I guess for me the most important thing is how to manage expectations.
Yes. I guess he has to work hard on that.
Exactly.
And not only expectations at home, but also expectations from South Korea, even also from North Korea, his counterpart there, and Japan as well. Having said that, though, Mr. Eland, here is the question. Who is going to take the lead eventually in drawing up this roadmap? Obviously, earlier, China was trying to be the centerpiece, putting everybody together, trying to come up with some kind of plan in the earlier 6 rounds of six-party talks. But things have changed. U.S. and DPRK have to work their things out between themselves. But the question is, for the roadmap, who is going to take the leadership, or leading at least, to the next stage? Washington, Pyongyang, or Seoul, or somewhere else?
Well, of course, it's hard to say, but I think it benefits to have mediators from other countries come in between the two. But we'll see how it goes, just one-on-one with the two of them, DPRK and the United States. And if we're going to talk about expectations, Donald Trump has increased the expectations by already declaring that the threat from a nuclear North Korea has passed, which is, of course, a drastic overstatement of the current situation.
Well, I guess, Ms. Tian, what he said is a political statement, isn't it? He's trying to tell it to his political constituency who only listen to his one-liner, and that's it. They probably believe of what he said, but seasoned analysts like you who follow it for years would not believe that is the case. It's only the very start of the very beginning. So now, Mr. Pompeo, what do you think are some of the things he could work on? Now you see North and South just have some very successful basketball team exchanges. Meanwhile, they're going to go to the Asian Games together with a combined team. Certainly a lot of civil society level exchanges. Will these kind of environment be able to create a warm bed, as they say, for some, at least, actions, mini steps to denuclearization? Ms. Tian.
Well, I think that's really, where we need to see going forward is where we're at. There is a difference between the political threat, the intention or the motivations, versus the actual capabilities. And we have not yet seen movements that actually affect the core capabilities, even though North Korea has made some gestures on the testing infrastructure, for instance. But certainly, it does create obligations for the United States as well. And like you said, there's many types of kind of cultural things that can be done. I am a little surprised how slow the movement has been to lift, for instance, the travel ban for American citizens to travel to North Korea. And some of those types of things that would help promote the humanitarian, the human-to-human, the people-to-people contacts, development work, and as well as, there was early talk about setting up liaison offices as well in Pyongyang. And so I would assume that, during these negotiations, some of those measures will need to be negotiated and need to see movement early in the process. In order to kind of keep the expectations going, keep the, a couple of wins on both sides moving, to keep the momentum for the negotiations.
But will basketball be able to save, I mean, the chances of having a roadmap of denuclearization? That's almost impossible, isn't it, Mr. Rong? Even some baby steps.
Well, definitely, I think it's not going to solve the problem, but it has played a very important role to maintain, I think, the momentum, and more importantly, improve the atmosphere.
Well, I remember that. I mean, the ping pong, table tennis diplomacy, as they say, between China and the United States certainly was the very opening of that relationship more than 40 years ago. But, you know, will that be similar to what is going on between DPRK and the United States? Don't forget, it is actually the North Korea and the South Korea that were having this kind of civilian exchange, not the United States and North Korea, Mr. Rong.
Remember, I think the current situation we have now is started, I think, by the inter-Korea interactions. I mean, the Pyeongchang Olympic Games and so on and so forth. But I mean, the North Korea and the U.S. process, of course, have always the most important thing. So now we are coming back to the new round of sort of interactions, where for me it seems that there are several processes that is going in tandem. For that, I mean, the inter-Korea interaction certainly seems goes a bit faster with that Panmunjom declaration, and of course in the U.S. and North Korea's track. But also it is also important that if you look at the North Korea's interaction with China, with Russia, and to some extent with so far not yet take place with Japan. So I think how to synchronize or how to manage these process is a very important issue for the moment. But the most important thing is I think so far all these processes seems that share the same point, that we need to looking forward to implement the agreement.
Right. Talking about implementation, there's another issue that people can look at, which is the military level. I mean, first of all, Mr. Eland, the joint military exercises between South Korea and the United States has been scrapped off for the months for now. And yet, we do not know what's going to be like. And at the same time, South Korea and North Korea are talking about military communications. We don't know at what level, though. So will military, on the other hand, following Panmunjom declaration, be able to provide us with more confidence than just the civilian exchanges? Can they really do something brave, or more than brave?
Well, I think all this really helps the general atmosphere of negotiations. And in international diplomacy, you can't dismiss that sort of thing. Any confidence-building measures that can be done, such as the suspension of exercises in the military area, or athletic exchanges in the political area, I think that helps. But the bottom line here is that do the parties have an incentive to come to an agreement? I would say that North Korea probably doesn't, and I think the Trump administration wants to have a win, so they have a bigger incentive to reach an agreement. Now, whether they'll get an agreement that's meaningful is another matter, and of course then it comes to whether it's going to be carried out once the parties agree to something.
Right. But the other thing is, if you have some kind of atmosphere being built, at least for now, you need to also have the plan and the people to implement that plan. Ms. Tian, we understand finally, and I want to emphasize finally, that U.S. has an ambassador in South Korea, a retired naval admiral, a Japanese origin, Japanese American. But yet he's not the expert in the field, even though he's one of those very well-established Asian American in the U.S. military. So, Ms. Tian, how much will he be this key person in making sure things in the region can move around with some of the U.S. input in it?
Well, I I think it's important that we finally do have that position filled. And, you know, his role is not necessarily to be the forward face of this, but really to make sure that communication happens. And I think this has been a big problem in our allied relations with both Japan and with South Korea in this process, is just a lack of communication and a lack of consultation in both ways, not just the U.S., but also some of the moves that the South Koreans have made in this process. So I think, you know, it will be very important for him, you know, to carry the U.S. message, whatever that's going to be, but also to be that conduit of information and constant consultation, because that's really what's going to be needed in these bilateral processes to make sure that they're not competing and they're not contradicting each other.
Right. Secretary Pompeo is already in his third time in Pyongyang. Let's take a look at some of the recent trips he made there and see what's going to be the significance of this time. At least he has to function during this trip. Secretary Pompeo made frequent trips to DPRK over the past few months. April 1st, then CIA Director Mike Pompeo met Chairman Kim Jong-un in a surprise visit to Pyongyang to lay the groundwork for the Trump-Kim summit. Later that month, Mr. Trump abruptly replaced the Secretary of State Mike Tillerson with Pompeo. On May the 9th, Pompeo visited Kim Jong-un again, this time securing the release of 3 U.S. detainees. On July the 6th, Pompeo made his third trip to Pyongyang to confirm the DPRK's denuclearization process. This marks the first visit by U.S. official after June the 12th Kim-Trump summit. But my question to you is, Mr. Rong, if you think about what is likely to be this roadmap, 3 elements really comes into mind. One is about the sanction. What to do with the sanction? When to do with the sanction? To what degree to do with the sanction? The other thing is denuclearization process. Remember, it's not just the DPRK denuclearization, it's Korean Peninsula denuclearization. And thirdly, there's also going to be the issue of security guarantee. So what about the security guarantee for DPRK once it agrees to denuclearize with the process? These 3 elements has to be in that blueprint, Mr. Rong. It's very complicated.
Well, it is indeed very complicated, and I think the more complicated thing is the sequence. Are the 3 things going to go together, or which would go the first, and or which one should go as the condition or preconditions? So to sort these things out, it certainly takes good diplomacy, but the most important thing is that I believe that the 2 sides, North Korea and the U.S., has to show or demonstrate sincerity, that they are really sincere to make progress.
Ms. Tan, what about your answer to that question, the complicated question, 3 elements, what to do with them, whether they are going to be dealt with in that blueprint, if there is going to be any?
Well, obviously, yeah, they do all have to be dealt with, and sequencing is a big issue. And certainly, you know, this idea that you can leave all the rewards to the end and backload a process is certainly not going to work. All sides need to feel like they have equal parity in this process. So I think, you know, this is part of why this is a complicated process, and we shouldn't be looking for Band-Aid and quick solutions, but really need to have a thoughtful negotiation process with some early wins along the way for all sides, again, to keep the momentum going. But certainly, you know, if you look at the agreed framework, that took a year to negotiate. The Iran deal took 12 years to negotiate. The idea that this is going to be done in just a couple of months and do quick with such a complicated and such an extensive WMD program, I think is unrealistic to begin with. And I think we need to give it the space and, you know, have the communication in that process to manage the expectations, but give it the space to actually have a thoughtful negotiation to be able to deal with all these complex parts.
Well, according to Mr. Bolton, that could be 1 year. Of course, it's unrealistic at all. It just sounds like another political groundwork for the presidential election in the United States, though. But having said that, though, let me ask you also about that, Mr. Eland. I mean, now it is really the time, but yet people wonder whether President Trump going to Singapore, having that handshake, having that photo op with Kim Jong-un, is it for politics only, or is it for really resolving the security issue regarding the United States and also the Northeast Asia? Will that issue be put away once that photo is being taken and once the smiles are being taken into the votes?
Well, I think the summit was for politics. Mr. Trump wanted the basking in the glow of the summitry. Nobody had ever met with, no leader, American leader had ever met with a North Korean leader. And so that was a, political coup for Mr. Trump. Of course, he's doing all this backwards. Usually you have all the preparatory work done and the leaders just meet to sign the, maybe negotiate a little bit and then sign the pact.
Right.
This is happening in reverse. So we're in uncharted territory. But I think the key thing here is they've always the two sides have always defined denuclearization differently. And I think in this case, Trump could break the ice by actively wanting to remove U.S. troops from South Korea. Many presidents wouldn't have done that.
Wow.
Jimmy Carter, I think, was the last president to suggest that. But, I mean, Trump has that type of foreign policy. Now, if he did that, that might break the ice and have a legitimate chance of getting an agreement. But I don't think the U.S. security bureaucracies are going to let Trump do that.
Okay, Ms. Town, before we go, very briefly, 30 seconds, is this going to just be another round of makeup for President Trump for his midterm votes, or this is going to be something his administration going to take really seriously?
That is the big question. I'm really not sure. I feel like now, we want to be optimistic. This is a new type of opening, and this is a new a new type of relationship that we have with North Korea. So there is a window of opportunity. But, certainly it's difficult, and it's going to come with a lot of criticism along the way. And the question is does Trump really have the thick skin to deal with the criticism?
Right.
Or will he just chalk it up to, I've done enough on this, I did more than others, I need to move on. And I think, time will only tell.
Time will only tell. That's exactly the quote we need to have right now. Jenny Town, Rong Ying, Ivan Eland. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for being with us. And you're watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei, still to come on our program. St. Petersburg's prominent Mariinsky Theater has been home to top ballerino Xander Parish, who left his native Britain to pursue his ballet ambition in Russia. His unusual journey for the love of dance and his story of rise in Russia right after this. This is World Insight. Our program comes to you Monday to Friday on CGTN. I'm Tian Wei. Earlier, I had the opportunity to have an exclusive interview with Xander Parish, the principal ballet dancer at the prestigious Mariinsky Theater in St. Petersburg. Since moving from London, he has loved his new life, wrapping up his audience in emotion through dance. Let's take a look at this first. Mariinsky Theater is one of the most historic theater of ballet and opera from Russia. Over the years, it is the home of some of the biggest names of Russian ballet. And today, we're going to meet one of them for the contemporary time. In fact, he's having a performance tonight at 7 o'clock. For now, he's going to share some time with us. Xander Parish, a British kid turned principal dancer of Mariinsky Theater. Let's go. The Grand Mariinsky Theater is now second home of Xander Parish, who is now the principal dancer of the Mariinsky Ballet Company. Parish left his hometown to pursue ballet at the age of 11, fueled by a sense of adventure and ambition. 8 years ago, he made the tough decision to move to Russia at the age of 23, where he has fallen in love with the country, fulfilling his ballet dream. What has been his journey from humble beginnings to dancing on the real world stage? Let's find out. You started in Britain, though.
That's right.
You're a British kid.
I'm Russian soul, British born.
When was the first time when you were dancing here? What was that like for you?
It was like it wasn't real. I remember it like yesterday. It was actually Raimondo was on stage right now.
Yes?
And
you're going to perform that tonight, too?
I will, that's
yes.
right. Yeah, that's correct. So I remember I actually wasn't meant to dance. I just joined the company. Someone got injured, and they said, "Oh, Xander, can you please dance this pass?" It was the two friends of Raimonda,
Yes.
the boys. I said, oh, well, I don't know the steps. And so I got a video, I learned it really quickly, I wrote down a bit of paper what to do, and that night I went and danced the performance, and I looked out at the auditorium, and it was like, it was magical because it's so gold, it's all golden, and you're on stage, but it's warm, because the glow of the lights are from the gold Tsar's box, it all reflects back at you, and it was magical, totally magical. When I perform, I want to give the audience something. I don't want to show them what I can do. I want to give them something to take away with them.
Yes.
I want them to take away a feeling. Not just a memory of what they saw, but a feeling of what they experienced. If I'm performing the role of Romeo, for instance, in Romeo and Juliet, I want them to cry. I want them to feel what I feel. What does Romeo feel on stage? What are his feelings for Juliet? How does he love her? How does he feel when she's dead, or he thinks she's dead? I want them to cry. If I'm doing Albrecht in Giselle, when the audience realizes that I've betrayed her, they should hate me. It's not just about what I can do. I mean, I'm learning. I'm trying my best to improve my technique to become a clean, better dancer. But that's always the foundation. You build on that with the emotion. It's the feeling for me that's important, not just the steps.
Absolutely.
So that's why.
So you learned that from the early time?
I don't know. It kind of came out once I started to dance and learn. I think it comes from inside. But certainly the amazing teachers here will develop that.
Yeah. But your story has been legendary, I have to say.
Yeah.
Started 4 years old, trying to learn ballet.
That's correct, yeah.
But most of the time, just playing with your toys.
That's correct, exactly, that's right. My sister was dancing, I was under the piano, like here, playing with my trucks.
Yeah. How did you get hooked to ballet?
Oh, it's funny, you know, I'm not even entirely sure. It just kind of crept up on me slowly and suddenly took over my life. When I was 11, I decided that ballet was the route I wanted to take. And my dad sat me down when I was 10 years old, and he said to me, he said, "Okay, Xander, the choice is yours. You must choose what you want to do with your life. It's your life. Your mum and I will not tell you what to do. You must pick. So what do you want to do?" I said, "Well, okay, I'll be a ballet dancer." And so I chose in my head. It was my decision.
Just like that?
Just like that. But once I decided, it wasn't just immediately. I really thought about it. And once I decided, I thought, right, that's it.
I have to say, you were quite a thoughtful kid. And then you went to learn ballet dancing in the Royal Ballet.
That's correct, yes.
Yeah. How did that go?
That was exciting. I mean, I'm from a small town in England, in the north of England, called Hull, in Yorkshire, the county of Yorkshire. And that's about 3 hours north of London by car. And so when I was 11, I moved down to London. And it was a big deal. When you're 11 in England, it's very small. You know, we're a tiny country compared to China, compared to Russia. England's tiny. I mean, so little. And London's a long way away from anything. And so, how we feel. For you, it's nothing, I'm sure. But I was like, oh, it's London, you know. I was 10 years old, 11 at this point. I went down to London to start to be a ballet dancer. And it was an exciting time for me. I had to really work hard. I wasn't naturally gifted with ability. I found it very hard, actually.
Yes.
I loved performing, loved being on stage. I felt comfy on the stage. But in terms of technique, I had a lot to learn, and I was behind my friends in schools. I had to work twice as hard as my contemporaries.
That's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, it was a lot of pressure, actually.
How did you overcome those pressures?
I mean, when I was in the Royal Ballet School, you have maybe 12 boys in one class.
Exactly.
And all those boys are your competitors. They're your friends, but also your competitors.
Yes.
And so at the same time, you're competing for the top place in the class. If you score below 50 in your exam, once a year, you must leave the school.
Oh my God, that's so cool.
A lot of pressure.
Yes.
I mean, now it's different, I think.
Did someone help you?
Well, my mum and dad would always support me on the phone. I'd call them up, sometimes cry, you know, whatever. But my mum always said to me, you know, without pressure, there would be no diamonds. in the earth, like the carbon gets pressured,
yes.
and it produces a diamond. And
yes.
so the same in your life. If there's no pressure, there'll be no diamonds in your life. So
and you are a diamond.
Well, trying to be.
Absolutely
being polished here.
shining, being polished here. That's one of the interesting things, isn't it? I mean, you were with the Royal Ballet in London, and yet you are not necessarily having the possibility of dancing the leading roles.
That's correct.
At the same time, you did not have much access to some of the top training. You have to beg on your friends to train you every 2 years out of their kindness.
Yes, that's right.
So how did that work?
Well, I suppose inside of myself, I had the desire. The number one step is desire, and I wanted it. I wanted to dance. I enjoyed what I did.
When you said the word desire, I saw the lights in your eyes.
Yeah,
just like that.
It's a spark, right? It's from inside.
Exactly.
I mean, I think as Nureyev always said, it's from inside. It's the, you know, he's alive when he's on stage. That was what he always said.
I know you were struggling before transferring from the Royal Ballet in London, of course, which is the very top.
In the UK,
of course,
sure,
here in Mariinsky, also top of the world. But that transition would not be that easy for a kid, you know, that age.
When I was in the UK, it was like a little bubble. I didn't even realize there was a world outside. I mean, I knew there was Russian ballet, Cuban ballet, all these other worlds, China, of course, emerging. A lot of great talent. You know,
we'd love to have you in the future.
I'd love to come.
We'll talk about that part a bit later, yes.
But, you know, when I joined the Royal Ballet School when I was 11, there was this, my world was this big. It was the Royal Ballet School, the Royal Ballet Company, Macmillan and Ashton. That's all I knew. I didn't know anything else. And so it wasn't even a thought in my head that I could go to Russia. So when Yuri Valerievich Fateyev invited me to come to Russia, my first question was, why? Why me? Why would I go to Russia? Who am I? I was nobody, nothing at all. And then what's good is when I did come, that my bubble got popped. And suddenly I found this new world, this huge ballet world. But what's really amazing is it comes full circle, because in the Royal Ballet School, one of my favorite teacher was Russian.
Oh.
Yeah.
Isn't that nice?
From this theater.
Okay. That's fate, as we Chinese say.
Yes, I agree.
But the time when the Mariinsky Theater wants you to join them and offering you a possibility of leading role, you were hesitating a little bit.
Oh, totally. It took me a long time to decide because, of course, my loyalty was to my home theatre in the UK. I was kind of naive. I was a naive child. I was young.
It's nice to be naive. You know that.
But I was a bit slow to pick up the pace on this one. So I was determined that if I just held my spear a year longer, eventually I would get noticed, and eventually I would dance.
It's much more complicated than that.
Yeah, it is. And it
as
never
you may
happened.
know.
And so, you know, I was enrolled for almost 5 years, holding my spears, carrying my trays, doing my walk-on parts. We call it mimans in Russian, like walking around the stage, carrying the objects, you know. And I was very good at it.
I'm sure you are.
I chose in the end because I thought, you know, eventually I will stay here in London all my life holding spears, and I wanted to dance.
You have a bigger world.
I hoped so. And I thought, it was exciting, because I thought, you know, I was like an explorer going to the jungle, you know, trekking a new path. I thought, I'm the first Brit, no one's gone to Russia before from the UK. You know, in England we say you don't sell coal to Newcastle, because that's where they dig the coal out of the ground. You know?
Exactly.
So you don't sell ballet to Russia
You
very often.
dig the coal. You did dig the coal.
I dig the coal.
You've done a lot here in Mariinsky. You also tour with Mariinsky around the world. Among those repertoires, what is exactly your favorite? I know this question is so hard for a dancer because you love every role you dance. But you know, what really gets into your blood?
When I was a young dancer in London, I was always typecast as the prince. From being a kid.
Good for you.
Which is great, you know. That's a privilege. It's just how God made me. Whatever,
well,
you know.
Mr. Prince, go on.
Exactly. So I was, from being 14 in school, it was down you do Swan Lake. You're the prince. It was just the way it was. I wanted to do Corsair. I wanted to do Basilia. I wanted to do all the fun, cool roles. But no, I was always the prince. Just how it was. And so my desire when I was young in London was to learn to become that prince. I wanted to learn the classical repertoire. I wanted to be Prince Siegfried, Count Albrecht, Prince Desiree. I wanted to learn these roles. And that was my real desire. And where in the world better to do that than here? Where else? I remember at school when I was maybe I was 17 or 18. I got told by the school to dance Swan Lake for some performance. I said, please can I wear white tights for the performance? They said, no, Prince Secret wears black tights. I said, why black tights? I want to wear white tights.
Yes.
But I didn't know that in Russia everyone wears white tights for princes. But in England, the Anthony Dale production of Swan Lake back then was wearing black ties. And the prince always wore black. Fast forward by, 5, 6, 7 years, here I am here, wearing my white tights.
There we go. As I said.
So I knew inside, somehow. Now I've learned those prince roles. I'm still trying to improve. I'm not saying I've got there. I want to improve. But now I want to learn the other repertoire. I want to learn the Russian repertoire. We have ballets here which aren't available in the West.
No.
Ballets like The Legend of Love, or Shiraleh, or this wonderful
Anna Karenina.
Yeah.
Oh, think about that.
Already.
Wow.
I'm learning this one. It's a great part. I'm improving. I've done it a few times. I want to improve on it more.
So what is Russian ballet? If I ask you 8 years after being the leading dancer of Mariinsky, what is it?
It's history, it's culture, and it's in the Russian blood, all put together on stage.
And the audience are very critical.
They are. Yeah. I've learned that the hard way.
Really?
Sometimes I'll be in the Zal here watching the performance.
Yes.
And a babushka will come up to me and say, oh, I know you. I watched your performance last week at Swan Lake. I like this. I didn't like that. Yeah, they'll tell me what they think. I say, thank you so much. I appreciate your work.
Your friends back at home, the other 11 kids, might ask you, so, Xander, how does that work? The system in Russia for dancers.
It's a good system they have here. Firstly, what I respect very much about the system here is how they develop dancers. Back when I was in the Rabbi 10 years ago, the system was missing the opportunity to develop talent. There was potential. Dancers such as myself had the correct physique, the correct legs, the correct form. But
more than the correct legs, I have to say. Yes.
That's very generous. Thank you. But they were missing the system of how to get from level A to level Z. How to jump. There weren't any teachers. The coaches in the Royal Ballet are only for the principal dancers who are already principal dancers, and so they work on the repertoire. But who helps the kids? Who teaches them how to become principal?
So you have to grope your way.
That's how I got my friends to help me. I was like, please, come over here and
exactly. But here it is more systematic.
Systematic. There's coaches, many coaches, who, when a dancer joins the Mariinsky Theatre, if they have the potential to become a great dancer in the future, they'll be given a teacher to teach them and to grow them like a plant, to be watered by a gardener.
What is their relationship, you and your teacher here?
It's great. It's like having a second dad, you know? My teacher is Igor Petrov.
Do you want to have a second dad? That's another question.
Well, whether yes or no, I have one. I have one here.
Another strict dad?
My Russian dad.
Yeah.
It's a privilege, and my teacher he'll be with me in the performances, in the wings. He'll listen to the music. He'll tell me corrections. It's a support.
Yeah.
And that makes you grow.
What is it that made you such a gentleman on the stage?
Well,
I was watching a little bit video of your previous dances.
Well, thank you.
And you look at the way you work with the female dancers.
Thank you. That's very generous. I'm glad you noticed. That's very nice to hear.
You support them with all your strength, lift them as if they were glass in a way, very light. We know it's not. And you put them down so gently.
Yeah.
You yourself even held your own breath to make them safe.
That's correct.
And look at gentle. You know, one dancer is good with himself, that's one thing,
Yeah.
in your solo.
Yeah.
But it is another thing whether you could also be both shining and supportive at the same time.
That's how it's meant to be. I mean, I was taught from a young age that the male dancer, his primary objective is to make the ballerina look good. That is my first job, is not to make myself look good, to make my ballerina look good.
But you know, everybody is being told like this, but not everybody is doing it like this.
I suppose that's true, I suppose. I guess I listened.
You did.
I remembered this.
You did.
Because I want my ballerina to look good. Firstly, I want her to be comfortable, I want her to be happy, I want her to feel good.
Yeah.
As long as she's happy, that's number one. If I can do a good job as well, that's number two.
Now, you know, Russia is changing.
Yeah.
Its economy coming from under sanctions
That's right.
to now prosper on its own.
very much so.
And also try to link with everybody else.
Yeah.
Cultural scenes too.
Yes.
Mariinsky traveled a lot around the world.
Yes.
So how is it like for you in a country in transition?
I have huge respect for Russia. I've fallen in love with this country like I never expected to. When I came to Russia 8 years ago, I came here to learn to be a ballet dancer. That was my desire, to learn to dance and to grow. I had no expectation to absorb the country. It was the ballet I came for. But in the process of being here, I've fallen in love with this city. I mean, you've been here. The city is incredible.
Absolutely.
I adore this place. I walk around. Last night after the show, I walked outside. It was the white nights already. The sky is a light blue. It's with palaces everywhere. It's just, Russia's come a huge way. In the last 8 years I've been here, the country has grown in every respect. The buildings are improving. The metros are being built. Even the cars on the streets, you see better and better cars everywhere.
Exactly. I travel here every year for the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum.
Right, of course.
We do see the changes every year.
You do, very much so. We have beautiful malls being opened, like shopping centres and things. You know, everything is here you could ever want. It's a beautiful place to live, and the people are very special here. I feel, I'm from Yorkshire, like I told you, and the Yorkshire soul is, in the UK, it's known for being very warm, very friendly. And I feel at home here because it's very similar. In Petersburg especially, people are very friendly, very kind. I mean, back home in England, people have the idea that Russians are very cold and closed. But actually that's not the case.
It's not.
It's not true.
Thank you so much, Xander. I really enjoyed every second of our conversation.
Me too. Thank you so much.
That is my exclusive interview with Xander Parish, one of those British kids who is rising on the international ballet stage after becoming a member of the Mariinsky Theater in Russia. And that is all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more, try to find this World Inside CGTN into your search engine, or check out our YouTube channel. You can also follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Sina Weibo. From me, Tian Wei, and to everyone on the World Inside team, thanks for watching. Tune in again next time for insights across China and around the world. Good night.